Good morning. It is just wonderful to be here. My name's David Forsell, and I think I was asked because I'm the president of a nonprofit in town called Keep Indianapolis Beautiful. And August has been about beauty here at All Souls, and so it's a real pleasure. And it's nice to be back. Some of you may know that I came here as a younger man and spent a lot of time actually with Ed Harris. He was a wonderful mentor of mine. And so it's just good to be back here. My mom ended up being UU. She was a good, solid Lutheran and married, though, late in life, a Jewish man. And so they ended up at All Souls in New York City, where Anastasia worshipped as a child. And so I'm sure that we were actually there at the same time, which is pretty remarkable. So I thought very seriously about seminary. Ed Harris was a wonderful mentor of mine. In fact, I did seminary for a year, decided it wasn't right, but it was... KIB, Keep Indianapolis Beautiful, has been a wonderful place for me to serve. So I just want you to know I wrestle with the ultimate. I wrestle with organized religion to some extent, but I have a real sense of the ultimate. And I embrace the purpose and the values and this incredible statement here. So I look forward to sharing with you today. Here's what I hope you'll hear in my words, and it's about how I'm choosing to live, based on an amazing mother, some amazing moments among some Minnesota cornfields, believe it or not. Yes, they can happen, amazing moments in Minnesota cornfields. And then ultimately, I hope I can share with you and relay that I choose to live my life as a grateful response for this wondrous gift that is life, this wondrous world, even in the context of ugliness and despair and all the things that we see. Despite all the evidence, I am firmly in the camp that this is an amazing world in which we live, and it's a place that is worthy of our love and our stewardship. So here we go. You guys up for that? Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll start with a story. The nurse called us back from an expansive waiting area. My family, my brother and my sister and I and my mother were at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. We were there to learn a little more about a genetic disease that had been robbing my mother of her eyesight. A good friend, the Jewish man, by the way, who she would later marry, believe it or not, urged us to go. He said, blindness may be just part of some more serious problems with this genetic disease called Hippel Lindau disease, and you better go check it out. So we were called into the doctor's office, Dr. Gordon, a geneticist up there at Mayo Clinic, and we got the news that my mother had advanced, unstoppable, but slow kidney cancer, and that it would be an uphill battle for her life. And then the doctor told me at age 17 that I had this disease too. And it's pretty heavy stuff. So some years later, we were going back to Mayo Clinic. Thank goodness for Mayo Clinic. I had a brain tumor that needed to be removed, and to get my mind off things, if you'll pardon the expression. You're with me. We thought that it would be fun to run up from Rochester up to Minneapolis to check out a preseason Cubs game with the Minnesota Twins at the Metrodome. But what I remember more about the trip really than the game is the trip up there, the drive itself. So this drive was graced by cornfields as far as the eye could see. And this was late March. I want you to know, late March in Minnesota, it's almost like winter, right? The skies were gray. What remnants of corn that was left in the fields were tattered and yellow from the harvest months previous. And my mom, of course, did not let that impede her. She had a reputation for walking us kids into the fields and the forests in our suburban Chicago home. And so this was no different, gray skies and all. She said, "Now, David, look out into the fields. Every spiraling stalk, every ear of corn reaches to the heavens. It's just another example of God's perfect order," she said. And despite the cold, gray, empty fields stretching out on either side of our car, when I looked at them, this isn't rational, but it's true. When I looked out at them, they were full and lush and green and undulating in the winds of Minnesota. They seemed to vibrate with energy. And I believe at that moment I had this glimpse of the miracle of our existence, the profound value of the natural world, and what Elizabeth Barrett Browning might say, that this earth is crammed with heaven. It wasn't rational, but it was real, and it's shaped me for a lifetime. So my mom had this amazing gift. The gradual loss of her eyesight and her battle with this cancer, they were catalysts for her for a deep appreciation of this world, for life. And it really did intensify her ability to see the miraculous in the commonplace. She ended up in New York City. She worked in soup kitchens. She worked in little basements of churches helping kids learn to read. I thought maybe she was carrying it just a bit too far when she invited a homeless guy up to her condo to give him a variety of toiletries, which I need not detail. So my mom was this beautiful artist, a lover of life, and she died more than 20 years ago. But her last words were, "I am blessed." So not a year later, I found myself here in Indianapolis as a young professional, walking along West Roach Street in Indianapolis. It's near 30th and Harding. And I was walking with Pastor Kenneth Ward, and he had just opened a little daycare for the families of his church. And across the street was this really terrible vacant lot. And he said, I don't need the kids to be experiencing or seeing this place. He said, gangs were fighting there, dogs were fought to the death, guns, just you name it. It was about decay and it was about decline, this place. The name of the church, Community Missionary Baptist Church. Pastor Ward said that he had a vision for the public spaces and the homes in his blocks to be restored. And he wanted to do that rather than expand or move his church. So as I walked with Pastor Ward to understand his vision for this children's playground and this garden on that lot, and we met with parishioners in the little church basement, I began to realize that I was walking in my mother's footsteps. And that project was amazing. We got a bank to donate money, and a company came out in just one day and created a beautiful little area for children to play and to raise vegetables for the seniors on that block in a place that had been a place really full of despair. A place of difficulty and despair had become a place of hope and joy and healing and sustenance. So today, I'm speaking to you as a 51-year-old, which is kind of hard for me to believe. I'm getting old, but you know what? That's pretty much a victory in my case. And it's about the time when my mother's health began to turn for the worse. 2 years ago, I nearly died immediately after my 8th kidney cancer surgery. And I was conscious at that moment. And I knew well that I could be in my last hours. I couldn't believe it, but it was true. And I've had 17 of these surgeries. Just 8 months ago, I had to have brain surgery again to take a little tumor off my brainstem, and it was pretty delicate. And the doctor said, you could be a pretty different person when you wake up. And probably, if things go poorly, you could be debilitated for life. So, for me, living, existing, this world is a remarkable, remarkable thing. I have routine reminders that time flies in an instant. For all of us, tomorrow is not guaranteed. So, my mom did walk us into the cornfields in the forest, but she also, because she married this wonderful Jewish man, Steve, she introduced me to Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. He was a mystic, really, and also an activist in the 50s. He walked with Martin Luther King in Selma. One of the words that was that have stuck with me is an organizing principle for my life. It's very simple, but take it in. Heschel said that just to be is a blessing. Just to live is holy. But he didn't stick there, as I said. Not just the feel-good routine or not something that had sort of come and went. He marched in Selma, and he wrote just beautiful things from seminary that he taught at in New York. A couple other things I want to share with you that he wrote. Listen about this. He has great belief in people. Humankind is humankind because something divine is at stake in our existence. We're not innocent bystanders in the cosmic drama. There is more kinship with us and the divine than we're able to even believe. The souls of humankind, he wrote, are candles of the Lord, lit on the cosmic way. Humankind is needed. Humankind is a need of God's. And this shorter one, which I love a lot. Living is not a private affair of the individual. Living is what humankind does with God's time, what humankind does with God's world. So Pastor Ward, his decision to stay in his church, he recognized right outside the doorsteps, of course, how broken the neighborhood was, but also his ability to help restore it. He was motivated by an idyllic vision of something far better than what he saw. He accepted that he had the power to change this world, and he responded with active love, with active devotion and service. And I suspected as I walked with Pastor Ward now 20 years ago that Keep Indianapolis Beautiful, we could do a lot of this. We could do this and make a remarkable difference. And gratefully we have. Just in the past 10 years, we've done 80 of these little parks. We've had more than 1 million hours of volunteer service given in the past 10 years. We've planted and cared for native trees. We hire youth, sometimes in their first jobs, to help tend the trees. The city is getting more biodiverse by what we do and how we choose to do it. The research shows that people get more connected and are more likely to serve after having worked with Keep Indianapolis Beautiful. So I'm privileged to be leading an organization where we truly are helping this world thrive. It's all happening from my perspective in this miracle, this ordinary, extraordinary world in our days, in our weeks, in our years. So could you imagine if we lived in a world where all of us had a consistent intent, big and small decisions, day in and day out, that we would consider the thriving of every living thing with the choices that we make? I think that in order for us to move to a world where we can carry out a vision of thriving, we probably need 3 things. They happen to all start with the letter A. Helps me remember things. First off, it's an awakening. It's an awakening. I had the luck of having this amazing moment in the Minnesota cornfields. It happened. And I was, Paul Tillich, a theologian, says that sometimes an act of coming and participating in a religious life is not your choice. You're grasped. And I really believe that that's true. I had this amazing opportunity to be awakened. And then I think the next bit is that there needs to be an acceptance of that awakening, the acceptance that it's within our power and our unique responsibility as people to live so that others might prosper. And, of course, we have to act. We have to act on it. Martin Luther King wrote and spoke of beloved community. I heard Anastasia talk about this just 2 weeks ago, about beloved community. Martin Luther King hoped for a day when his notion of radical mutuality was real. So despite very difficult experiences with organized religion, I'm speaking about myself now, and people who professed faith in ways that could be very hurtful, despite that, I have discovered through seminary, theologians, and scripture that fortify my ecological ethic. It feels like a grounding to me. Just a couple of examples. A lot of us think about dominion in Genesis, that humans have dominion over the earth. Well, if you look at the second chapter, it's about tending the garden. It's not about dominion. It's about caring for and tending the garden, humanity's first calling. And in Revelation, which is kind of a crazy book anyway, there is this moment when heaven comes to the city and the leaves of the trees are for the healing of the nations, and they bear fruit, and they are along a sparkling, clean, and beautiful river. So, what do? I think we awaken. We awaken to the heartbreak, but also the joy of our mutuality. We accept the weight, and we accept the exhilaration of our power, our responsibility to change the world, and we act. We act righteously, we act boldly, we act quietly. That's up to you, right? But we act. Think carefully about what you eat. How you eat. Does it reflect the values you hold for this world? Indiana is an incredibly important flyway for the monarch butterfly, and I'm sure most of you know it's endangered. Think about a native garden with swamp milkweed. Swamp milkweed is the only plant that supports the monarch's full life cycle, and we need it in our gardens. Consider a day of volunteering. We're going to be planting trees at KIB in the fall in some of the city's places where they're absolutely needed the most. And I see Carrie Hamilton today. I see Carrie Hamilton. You can also give money. Think about giving money to organizations like the Indiana Recycling Coalition or Jesse Carbonda. I hope some of you know him with the Hoosier Environmental Council. Organizations that advocate need our support as well. So I'm closing with this. I have modeled my mom's life. I had a pretty good teacher about how to spend my days. And I was grasped by an amazing vision that maybe not too many people have that opportunity. And I've chosen wonder. Chosen mystical participation in this world, despite the evidence. So no matter what our experiences are, your experiences are, Heschel says that we are so up to this and caring for this beautiful world. And I love the language he chooses. It's very earth-centered. He wrote, and this is back in the 50s, people, "It is within our power to mirror unending love in deeds of kindness, like brooks that hold the sky." So what is yours to do? Thank you.